Welcome back to another episode of the One You podcast. And today I have Amanda here with me. Thank you so much for coming on, Amanda.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm super interested about hearing more of your story because I know that you have had a lot of health issues along your lifespan as well. So tell me a little bit more about you and your health journey.
My health journey started before I was born. So I was born 6 weeks early. I was supposed to be born about Valentine's Day, and I was born January 5th. Yeah, and I was just constantly sick. At one point, my grandmother said, she told me this recently. She's like, "Oh, you came home with like a breathing machine. And did you know, like, your parents didn't want to use it when you came home? Like, they went out and then she had to do CPR and she had never done that."
Oh my God.
So I was like, okay, so that's all. Yeah, I'm like, okay. And I don't talk, and I haven't really shared that many times in like podcast episodes that I've been doing this for a little over 2 years because I never really knew the story, so I never thought of it, but that's something to think about. Like, I was just a lot of different things were happening in my little body. I was constantly sick, like, every single week, and, like, I would be down for the count, like, 10 days, and I wouldn't be able to do anything. I watched a lot of TV because I was just, like, I couldn't focus on anything else. Sinus infections, sore throats, headaches. Um, for several years, I would run a really high temperature, and then for several years, I would run just a temperature where it would just be normal, but it would go up just a little bit, and I would be down. And so I was always trying to be better, like trying to get healthy. And my parents divorced when I was 6. My dad remarried when I was 8 years old, and there was trauma. And I tell people this because I'm like, everybody has some childhood trauma. And there was a lot of like mental things where I was the oldest, and my sister would be like, "Amanda, don't speak up, we'll get in trouble." She was 2 years younger than me. And my dad had married someone who had a 2-year-old, and she was pregnant with her second as she was getting a divorce. So looking back, I didn't like, it didn't really register in my mind, but now looking back, I'm like, oh, maybe there was something there too. Like, there was lectures, like 3.5 hour lectures, 4.5 hour lectures. We were just like, we would go to my dad's, and we didn't want to go to my dad's. Like, there was a lot of like suppressed emotions, and I was the one who was never got in trouble, but I was the one always in trouble at their house, and I was always the one who had to miss out on things and stand in the corner and be told, "Oh, you're missing out because you've been bad. You've been a bad child." The courts got involved. It was just a mess that last year. Going into junior high, high school, and stuff like that, like, I actually got held back because I just struggled with school so much. But when we moved to Arizona from California, it was like, okay, I was getting less sick, but I was still sick all the time. 4 to 6 weeks, I was just sick, sick, sick. And yeah, that trauma and stress had gone away, but I was still stressed out because I was the type where I liked to get good grades. I pushed myself, and I was very stressed out looking back as a child and stuff. And when I completed high school, I was like, okay, I love fitness. That's my passion. Went into a personal training program, completed that 6 months course. And as soon as I completed that course, like 2 weeks later, I turned 20 years old, and I just couldn't get out of bed. I was in so much pain, so fatigued, so exhausted. And 10 months later, they diagnosed me with fibromyalgia at one of the top rheumatologist places in Mesa, Arizona.
Wow, what a story. I don't know where to start. I'm like
Yeah,
trying to process all this. That's yeah,
yeah,
you've been through a lot for sure. So you said when you were a kid, you were like, so you were during your entire like childhood and upbringing, you were sick every 4 to 6 weeks. Is that?
yeah. I say when I would say from like 7 to 14
Mm-hmm.
because we moved to Arizona a month before my 14th birthday. It was pretty much every other week. I would go to my dad's every Sunday, but that last year the courts got involved and it went from every other week. I mean, every week to every other weekend. And that was the stress of, okay, we have to spend the night now. It wasn't just, okay, a day long thing, but it was like Saturday morning to Sunday night. And so I was sick
So
probably the week before I would have to go in and stuff like that because I was just so stressed out. And a lot of times I was refusing to go out. Like I wouldn't go out, but my sister would go and stuff like that. And there's been memories and stuff that I've been told that's happened with my sister that I wasn't there for, but like we all process things in different ways. And I think my way of processing it was different than my sister's way of processing it and stuff like that. And I processed it with, okay, I'm sick, I'm stressed out, and like that was my way of protecting myself
yeah,
and stuff like that. My sister was more of this type where I still think she hasn't dealt with it, but she says she has. But she's more of like, okay, I have to worry about everything in my life and everything has to be perfect. So she has more of a type A personality type sort of and stuff like that. But it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with your trauma and know that you could get through it.
yeah, definitely. Do you feel like you have been able to process all the traumas, or are you still working on it?
That is the thing that keeps coming up recently when I do these interviews is like I tell people there's something you're always working on. So maybe it's your food for a year and then you get that sort of you got that like routine and you're like, okay, I'm fine with that. But for me this year, and it's been quite a year because this past year I just moved to Texas. So I don't have family here. I don't have friends here. So I started from scratch. And that was really rough for me. And I finally have some friends in the last couple months, but I'm still like, okay. In the last couple months, something happened with a friend. And I'm like, okay, that's been brutal. That was brutal for me. But also the fact that I'm like, okay, all these memories are coming up of like, okay, I still have to deal with these childhood trauma and stuff like that. And I have to forgive people. And it's rough. It's hard. And that's why I tell people like, you gotta get like people that can help you with that and stuff like that. And I'm doing something this week for that, us actually. I actually did something 2 months ago where I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to this thing. And it was like a prayer freedom thing. It's a Christian thing. But like it was like a lot of it was just forgiving people and saying, bringing up memories that came up. And like memories that came up were like memories from a couple years ago, like with my sister, but like, and then a memory with my mom. But the most important memory was the memory with my dad. Like that one was the one that hit the hardest. And that was the one where it happened like 20 something years ago. The other memories happened like in the last year, the last 3 years, right? So you really don't know what memories are going to come up. This one that I have on Thursday, I'm like, okay, there is that person that I have to forgive. I have a friend and like I have to forgive that person and stuff for what he said and stuff like that. But then I'm like, I gotta bring up some things where I'm like, I gotta realize, like, it's okay not to always be trying with people and stuff like that also, because I'm sort of one of those people who are like, I don't want, like, I just keep trying, and I don't always have to be pouring into everybody else. And that's something I've really learned this year, especially the last 3 months. If you're not pouring into me, then I don't always need to be pouring into you.
Exactly, that is so true. It's so important because a lot of people, they're just giving and giving and giving, and they're not thinking about themselves.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I got to a point with this friend, I was like, he told me, he's like, "You're the one reaching out, you're doing all of this," and I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. It's been a one-way street, and this is like a year and a half friendship, right?" Also, was hard because I'm like, "It's okay. It's okay," but, like, sometimes you put people in this place of, like, that they don't wanna be in. And I realized that where I was like, okay, I'm putting him in this place that he doesn't want to be in, right? And so instead of being like, okay, I need to go to God or someone else for
Mhm.
this and stuff like that. It's not this person.
As you say, it's important to have like it sounds like you have a good network around you with people that are helping you to deal with traumas and things that are happening in your life. And it might be hard to find those people if you feel like at first, and even more for you who just recently moved.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to be like, okay, can I share this because this person said we weren't friends and I'm like, what is going on? Because we've been talking for like a year and a half. So I was like, this is weird. It's also realizing, okay, sometimes you can't really be as close with the opposite of sex
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And that's okay.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. Sometimes you can't be as vulnerable because they take it the wrong way, right? Um, I have one good guy friend and he's great and stuff like that. But I do have one girlfriend and it's like this is the girl that I could be like she came over, she's like I sent her something and she's like, "Can I come over?" She's called me and it was like 8 o'clock at night. And I'm like, "Sure, I just got groceries. My kitchen's a mess, but okay." And this was a couple weeks ago and she's like, "I want to just come over because I need a hug." But I'm like, "Okay." And we cried. Well, I didn't cry, but she cried and stuff like that. And we spent like an hour and a half just talking and praying together. And like that's the thing. You don't those people don't there's not that many people that will do that with you. So you have to really treasure those people when they come into your life. And her and I are going through some hard stuff right now. So we're the ones who are like, okay, we're gonna encourage each other. If it's like a message or a quote or a song or a sermon or whatever it is, we text each other like every couple days just to bring positivity into our lives because we're really going through some hard stuff right now.
That's amazing that you have a friend that is so close and that you can share everything with, because it's so important for everybody to have that. And yeah, that's so amazing. Uh, but so you said you got your diagnosis in your 20s, your fibromyalgia. Now I blew that word. Yeah.
Yeah, I got diagnosed when I was 20 years old. Yeah. So it'll be 12 years in the fall. Yeah. I mean, is like, "Oh, you don't look 32," but I'm like, "Yeah, I'm 32." I turned 32 this past January. Yeah, for me, it was a big like opening of like, okay, I have fibromyalgia, but what can I do to get better from it? And the doctors just didn't have the answers for me. They were like, well, do physical therapy, do medication and stuff like that. So it was all out of like, okay, Amanda, we don't know what to do with you type of thing. I did physical therapy, weight training, strength training. And looking back, I'm like, that's funny that they recommended that. I was never like overweight. And so I tell people it's not an overweight issue, but like with fibromyalgia, you could look perfectly normal. But I tell people that was what they thought was going to help with the pain and the fatigue. And I just cried. I was crying all the time. I was in so much pain. And then when I did the medication, I didn't stay on it for very long because it didn't make me feel well. And my grandma was like, "You're not doing that." So then it was just this slippery slope of trying thing after trying everything, and that's the thing,
Mhm.
right? For me, it was finding answers through, like, a wellness chiropractor. My grandmother found him, said a li this said, "Wellness talk by wellness chiropractor," and I was like she told me, she's like, a light bulb went off in her head when she said, "Oh, he said if your granddaughter has fibromyalgia at 20, she's been very sick a long time." And so that was a turning point in my journey.
So, did he think that your sickness before was due to the fibromyalgia as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't ever had that question. I think so, but he also knew my cortisol levels were bad. I found out I had two genes predisposed me to gluten sensitivity. One from each parent have highest in his practice at the time, a soy sensitivity, egg sensitivity, dairy sensitivity. So that was I'll be 10 years I've been off of those next month. But like he knew everything was messed up, my gut health and everything like that too, and stuff like that. And that's the thing. I tell people like I still struggled with my health after that. It took years for me to get where I was like, okay, I'm feeling better. But then you think about, okay, I dealt with health issues for the 20 something years, 21 years, and stuff like that. That's the thing. And I tell people, like, there's always something people are working on. Like, right now, it's the trauma issues for me. And
Mhm.
it's not fun, it's brutal. But it's something that's getting forced that I have to focus on it this year, which I am not enjoying, but I have to do it. And that's the thing. A lot of times I think with our health, whatever it is, it has to be forced. That we have to get to a point where we're so tired of whatever it is that are forced to do it. If it's our trauma or it's like what are we focusing on, our food or our energy, it has to get to a breaking point. And that's the thing. A lot of what I've had to deal with is because I came to this breaking point of like, okay, that's what I need to focus on at this point in my life. And sometimes your health takes way more priority than everything else in your life. And that's okay.
That's so true. So, did it take the doctors a long time to diagnose you, or was it pretty quickly, or?
So, with the diagnosis of fibromyalgia, I don't know. It took, I guess you say, took 20, almost 21 years. I guess I don't really know.
Yeah.
Um, I was just sick all the time. I wasn't, and I don't know if I started dealing with the pain down my whole body till I was like 20. So maybe it all came to a head, but I had fatigue. I dealt with headaches, focus, learning difficulties I dealt with. So maybe it all came to a head, but it probably started in childhood where it just built up in my body and stuff like that. I had no
Mhm.
idea. I don't really focus on that. I'm like, okay, what did I do to get better? That type of thing. But yeah, I think a lot of times with our health, we get stuck on like the diagnosis. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, the diagnosis, but what are you doing to get better? And stuff
Exactly.
like that. Are you
That was
working
my
on those
next question.
relationships? Last year, my thing, I think biggest thing last year was I was in a toxic environment. Not like a not of toxins, but like just people I'm talking about.
Mhm.
This year it's my trauma I'm working on. So it's not been fun the last year or this year, but it has to be done for any future relationships or relationships that I end up being in. And that's the thing. People might have to work on their sleep, might have to work on their food. What is it that you have to work on? You don't have to work on all of them all at once, because sometimes with the trauma, that's a lot. That takes a lot out of you. So you're not going to want to change your whole diet if you're like working on trauma stuff right now, right? So you have to pick which one you think is going to be the best thing for you at this time in your life.
You're so right about that. What was the first thing you started to work on back when you got in touch with the chiropractor?
So I did an elimination diet. So I got rid of like all the foods, and then I was just eating protein and vegetables and stuff like that. Add in one or two every couple days dairy, or and see how it is. I really don't remember that time too much because it's been so long, but that was what I was working on then and stuff like that. And that's the thing. Like my journey's whatever, 10 years if you count, or 12 years. It'll be 12 years that I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia this fall. But so like you might have years where you're like not working on anything, and that's okay. Maybe you're just keeping steady with whatever you've been doing and stuff like that. Some years you might have where you just go off because it's been a bad year. The last couple of years has not been the greatest in this world, right? So people have not been as taking care of themselves and stuff like that. Whatever you do, like get the help you need. Like I had a family member pass, and it's coming up on 2 years in August. And my dog passed like 12 days before. So that was rough. Like that was so that was in 2020. So I went on my church's website. I was like there, and I saw that there was a grief class, and she hadn't passed yet, but I knew she was going to pass and stuff like that. So I only missed the first week, and I spent 13 weeks for 2 hours, like on a Zoom meeting type of thing with other people who were going through grief. And that's the thing. And there was like, I think there was a book and a video we watched. I can't remember, that type of thing. And I don't think I was very good at reading the book, but the whole point is the following year in February, they're like, oh, do you want to do it again? And I'm like, no, I feel like I worked through it. And that's what I felt like I didn't need that at that point. And that's what I tell people. It's like, you don't know what you need. That's why you get help with other people to help you show you what you need and stuff like that. But if it's taking a grief class, if it's working with getting out of that environment that's toxic, or it's that whole thing of working through your trauma and stuff like that, whatever you do, pick one area, and it might take you several months to go through this. Like this trauma stuff, like it came to a head back in March, like around March 20th. So it's about 3 months ago that this happened and stuff like that. And I'm still working through it. It'll probably take hopefully not too much more months because it's exhausting, but like it takes time and stuff like that. So you can't rush the process.
That's so true. So, do you help people with this? Like, if they're dealing with similar things like you or health issues?
Yeah, so for me, I can't, like, my expertise is not trauma. That's why I have people on my podcast that talk about trauma because I know it's so important. For me, it's more of like, okay, what is your sleep like? What are your relationships like? I'm going to get to know you as a person. Like, I am the type of person where I love getting to know somebody. So, we're going to talk about, okay, what are you dealing with? What is your lifestyle like? What are your supplements? What are you eating? And I'm not about diet because I hate that. but what foods are you putting into your body? What's out of balance? Like, is your digestive system out of balance? Is it because all your health, whatever your top three health concerns are, they always go back to whatever your system is. So it might go back to your digestive system or it might go back to your endocrine system. So, what are those things that you are dealing with as a person? Yeah, we might work on cooking, we might work on nutrition because I love that. That's a big passion of mine. But what is your mindset? If you don't have a good mindset, then how are you supposed to get well? So, what is your mindset? Do you want to get well? Do you want to do these things? Or maybe this is not the right time. But like, what's your mindset about everything? Do you really want to get well? You have to get to that breaking point. And like, I do online cooking classes and I do in person cooking classes, but I also do like one on one services because I'm like, people are not a one size fits all approach. And that's what a lot of people in this field do is like they say do intermittent fasting, do keto, do paleo, and I'm more of the type where I'm like what works for me might not work for someone else. I'm 32, not married, don't have kids, so I have more time to do things and cook and stuff than somebody like my sister, but my sister likes to cook, but she's 30. She just had a baby, so she has a baby who's 3.5 months old. She's going back to work this week, and she has a almost 3-year old. The 2-year old's turning 3 next month. So, and she has her husband. So, like, her lifestyle is totally different from my lifestyle. So, why do we think in this world that we all should be on the same plan as our friend or our family member? Because they're dealing with stuff we probably have no idea what they're dealing with. It's all about individuality.
Exactly. I do agree with you on that. That's why I call this podcast One You, because there's only one you out there, and we all need to take that into consideration and find what works best for us. Because some people think that like things are the best solution, but there is no best solution for everybody. There is a best solution for you right now, right here, and then it might change, as you say, as well. So yeah. So, where can people find out more about you and if they want to work with you or, yeah.
Yeah, so they could email it me at amandaleeslove@gmail.com and find me on Facebook. It's just Amanda Lease Love. I am on Instagram, but I don't really use it as much. Facebook's the better platform. But the best thing is joining my Facebook group, Physical Emotional Health Seekers, where you could get more information about like online my online cooking classes, my services, join a community that wants to get better, and also the fact that I have a podcast that's been going for 3+ years. I started in May 2019. So I talk about cooking, meal planning, all of that type of stuff. Those are my solo episodes. I have talked about sleep and but I also bring on guests who are like want to get people to get better. If you are dealing with hormone health, pelvic health, uh, functional medicine, I've had chiropractors, autoimmune was the latest episode. So whatever you're dealing with, that's a great way to learn more about what I'm about and stuff like that. There's some topic that interests you, then that's great. You can listen to that episode and maybe get some tips to get started.
I love that. I will link both your Facebook group and your podcast in the show notes so people can go, yeah, join your Facebook group and listen to your episodes. Is there something more you want to share before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I would love to share is that don't put your health on a back burner. You only have one life to live, so take care of your health. Like I didn't know 12 years ago I would have a 3-year-old niece and a 3-month oldies. And like that's what I tell people. If I hadn't gotten better, like I would have been able to travel from Texas to Arizona on a plane, like play with them, hold them, and stuff like that. I would have been able to do that if I hadn't got it well. I would have maybe gone, but like I wouldn't have been fully present. And that's not fair to those to my nieces, but it's not fair to me either. So you have to have a big why for getting well and then take one small action today. And if that's finding someone to help you, then that's your step.
I absolutely love that. Thank you for everything you shared, and thank you so much for coming on and telling us about your journey. Yeah, I'm so happy you have been on.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks. And maybe we'll do it again soon.
Sounds good.